Welcome to Social Personality Development Unit 7. This unit is on friendships, and it builds off our last unit on the self. Now that we know who we are, how do we interact and make friends? And throughout this unit, you're going to see the themes of butterflies and bees. And that's really just a metaphor for the social butterfly and the queen bee, and how we sort of build hives and networks together. So you can think of the great pollinators as being a key instrument in how we form friendships. So we're going to start things off by just talking about what do we mean by friendship? Well, it's important to distinguish between peers and friends. A peer in most social developmental literature is defined as someone who is same age or at the similar developmental stage who is around you. It's an acquaintance that spends a decent amount of time with you, but you don't really get really intimate or familiar with one another. So this is very commonly our classmates that we recognize, we know their name, but we don't know them really in depth, and we don't have an emotional attachment to them. This could also be things like coworkers or neighbors, or just people that you are associated with in everyday life that are sort of the people that make up your world, but you're not really close to. Those are peers. Peers are different from friends in that friends tend to be defined as something that has an emotional attachment and a mutual affection towards one another. A friend is defined as someone that you look forward to seeing them and they look forward to seeing you. And if they're a classmate, they're the classmate you seek out and try and sit with in class. Or if they are a coworker, they're the coworker you look forward to talking to at the water cooler the next day at work. So there's a bit of reciprocity involved in friendship that may not be involved in peers. And it's the idea that you enjoy being with one another. Of course, there's a lot of formalization of friendship where you might feel like you haven't met the threshold to be a true friend yet, or are they still a work friend or a school friend, or are they a friend? Well, what we tend to define in the literature is if you enjoy spending time together, even if that time is only in the workplace or only at school, they could be considered a friend. Now, when it comes to social networks and every acquaintance you've ever known is considered a friend, that is indeed a problematic definition of friend. So how do these friendships develop? Well, it tends to vary by age. At our very youngest instances in the preschool years, what tends to happen here is we form friends based on proximity and availability. And this is the idea that you put two kids in a room and they're not fighting, they probably consider themselves friends. At the very youngest of ages, around age 2 to age 3, this is when there's a lot of overlap between what are peers and what are friends, because a child may consider somebody they played with in a doctor's waiting room once to be a friend. Versus when we get older, the threshold to become a friend becomes much more challenging. If a child is allowed to select a friend from a group of classmates or a group of other children in daycare, they tend to identify and pick the kids that have some similarities to them. Maybe their names start with the same letter, or they really like their name. Maybe they both have the same favorite color, or maybe they have some vital statistics that are similar. Maybe they both have blonde hair or curly hair, or maybe they celebrate the same holidays. And so it tends to be pretty superficial, pretty shallow what constitutes a friend in the preschool years. As we move on to about ages 7 or 8 and in the middle elementary years, we tend to find that in middle childhood, kids tend to look for other kids who have similar hobbies. This is the idea that a child who likes reading and video games may not be driven to be friends with a kid who likes skateboarding and sports. And so this is the idea that they are looking for someone who can enhance their excitement and their amusement towards the activities they like to do. So that's what they're looking for in a friend, the ones that want to do the same activities as them. If they don't like playing dolls, if they would rather go play hockey in the street, they may not consider themselves friends because they do different activities. When we get to the more late childhood, preteen years, that is about age 10 to age 11 or 12, what tends to evolve here is the real valuation on social skills. So this is the idea that we are looking for friends who can cooperate, who can be nice to us and not overly aggressive to us. These are the friends that have an idea about how they're presenting themselves, and the socially competent kids are going to make friends a bit easier. So we're in grade 4 in most Canadian school systems. This is when we start to see a bit more selection in terms of who is friends. You can't just be in proximity and like the same things. Now you need to have some skills to make the cutoff to be a friend. And so because of this, preteens start to really focus more on their self-presentation and their impression management. Are they coming across as a good friend? what's going on. And the preteens that are not quite there developmentally yet, that aren't recognizing that maybe they need to hone their social skills, this is when they may start to fall behind. They may start to feel a lot of social exclusion. Even if they weren't extremely overtly aggressive, even if they're just a little bit awkward, this may be when they start to decline in the number of friends or the amount of interactions they have with their friends. And then when we get into full-blown adolescence, we find this deepens once again. We start to value things like loyalty, intimacy, and disclosure. Can you tell someone a secret and trust them with it? Can you tell them about something that makes you really vulnerable and really nervous? And the purpose of friendship here really enhances our adolescent development in that it gives us chances for self-exploration, and it gives us a sense of our identity. We start to base our identity off of who we are affiliated with. And if you're affiliated with friends that don't feel right and you don't feel like you're being your true self around them, then you're probably going to discontinue that friendship and look for friends that allow you to be your true self. So the development of friendship evolves, like from an egg to a caterpillar, cocoon, and butterfly, from early preschool years to adolescence and emergent adulthood. And one of the scholars who's been responsible for sort of carving out these different steps is Rubin.